Raider Nation, I got a game for you. Who's that player? One of the favorite shows I had growing up as a kid. I was a big Pokemon fan. Hell, I could probably name all 151 of the OGs. But my question to you is this. Who's that player? Because by the end of today's show, I'm going to tell you who that player is and why I think that the Las Vegas Raiders could potentially sign them. Raider Nation, what's going on? You're watching the Raiders Report, and coming up here on today's show, I have one player that I believe Josh McDaniels, Dave Ziegler could potentially show interest in, and then even might go out and sign in NFL free agency. If you don't already know, we are the #1 most watched Raiders show in the entire world, and if you're a real one, hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications, and if you are a real one, or if you're already subscribed, you might know who this player is because I've mentioned it before on a show. So take a second, hit that sub button, and make sure you never miss anything around the silver and black. So the Raiders, they were interested in Andrew Van Ginkel. Ginkel had a visit with the silver and black, and then guess what? He ended up re-signing with the Miami Dolphins. Ginkel is a defensive end / linebacker who does offer a lot of versatility, and that B word is going to be a very common word that we continue to use during free agency, during the draft, because this Patrick Graham defense needs versatility. Josh McDaniels, Dave Ziegler, they want versatility, but they also want to be able to find players that fit into their scheme and fit what they're trying to do. Dave Ziegler also said this offseason that he's looking for a defensive end that he can also use in coverage. So my mindset is like, all right, they brought in Van Ginkel in for a visit. If you bring a player in with a certain skill set in for a visit, that means you're looking at some guy, right? You're looking at a certain player that you're like, this could potentially be him. To me, you didn't get Andrew Van Ginkel, so could you potentially get somebody else? So this was the player that I showed to open up this show. Do you know who the player is? Well, guess what? The player that I believe that the Las Vegas Raiders could sign is Kyle Van Noy. When you look at this Raiders team, they're looking for an outside linebacker. You're looking for a defensive end. You're looking for a player who offers a lot of versatility, but on top of that, has experience playing with, the Patriots. You want to find another Patriot system guy? He's got it. Even on top of that, the Raiders have done a good job this offseason of finding dudes who have been in the AFC West that know what it takes to be able to succeed against guys like Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert. And if I'm the Raiders, I'm looking at Kyle Van Noy right now. I'm like, all right, you played with New England. You're a success. You can fit into this defense. That's a success. And you've also gone up against one of our biggest rivals multiple times, Chargers, Broncos, Chiefs. Like, that is a huge, huge success. So for all those reasons, I believe that the Raiders could potentially sign Kyle Van Noy. He played on the Patriots from 2016 to 2019. And then guess what? They liked him so much, they brought him back in 2021. He can play defensive end. He can play outside linebacker. And we know that the Raiders have a big-time need here at LB. Even more importantly to that, Van Noy played with Brian Flores. When Brian Flores was down in Miami, he was once previously a New England Patriots coach. So you have multiple regimes that at least have a little bit of connection with New England. That screams volumes to me. Last season with the Los Angeles Chargers, he had 46 tackles, 5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, a forced fumble, and 2 fumble recoveries. Van Noy is not nearly the player that he once was. I do think, though, he can still contribute to a team. It's not going to cost you a lot of money, and he would be a good fit in the system because he's been able to prove before that he's a good fit and what the Raiders are coaching right now. Coming up next here on the Raiders Report, do I want the Raiders to sign Van Noy? Because whether I want it or not, it comes down to money. Like, I will tell you how much money I think it's going to cost and whether or not I think it makes sense for the silver and black. Before I get into that, though, the Raiders Report is presented by Athletic Greens. And if you haven't already gotten your AG1, Chuck's staring at me because he wanted some. I think you guys are going to want some as well. I take AG1 by Athletic Greens literally every day. Get comprehensive and convenient daily nutrition at athleticgreens.com/chatsports. I gave AG1 a try because I wanted the immune system support and wanted the supplement that actually tastes great. I take AG1 in the morning and it makes me feel ready to take on my day. My grandparents always said that the early bird gets the worm. AG1 inspires and motivates me to get as many worms as possible every day. AG1 really helps me with getting my day started, getting out of bed, especially after some of our crazy shows like signing Duke Shelley. It can be difficult, and I'm a person who likes and needs a routine. AG1 helps me stick to my healthy routine, wake up early, take my AG1, take Chuck for a walk, then hit the gym before work. Covering my nutritional base for the day literally couldn't be easier, which is why I trust Athletic Greens. I just mix one small scoop of AG1 with water and drink it first thing each morning. Done! I also like it because it costs less than $3 per day. That's pretty freaking good if you ask me. It's a really effective daily habit. With the highest quality sourced ingredients, it is a win-win. If a comprehensive solution is what you need for your supplement routine, then Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. So nation, go to athleticgreens.com/chatsports. That's athleticgreens.com/chatsports. Check it out. Link's going to be available for you guys in the comments and in the description of today's video. So obviously I'm up here on today's show saying that, hey, I want Kyle Van Noy. I think he's a good player. I think he'd be a good fit. But it does come down to dollar bills, y'all. So do I want the Raiders to sign Van Noy? Because if it's going to cost too much money, then the way that this team is constructed right now, I don't know if it ultimately makes a lot of sense. So if you're watching live, shout out to you. If you watch this on a later date, hey, no, when big-time breaking news happens, like if the Raiders sign Van Noy, we're going to be going live. From a career standpoint, first we're going to show tackles, sacks, and then tackles for loss. The numbers that I really want to look at are realistically his last 3 seasons, right? Where in 2022, 46 tackles, 5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. 2021, 66, 5-5. 2020, 69, 6-10. He has shown me in 3 totally different defensive schemes that he was able to play at a pretty damn good level and definitely outplay his contract. So knowing that, I'm like, guess what? I'm going to roll the dice again, considering the fact that he's played in essentially 2 Josh McDaniels, Dave Ziegler schemes before. So depending on how much you pay him, I think it's going to end up paying off. From a other positional standpoint, like those are the numbers that you're looking at right now from a defensive end linebacker. From a versatility, he can drop back. There are not many defensive players in the NFL right now that offer you what Van Noy offers you. And when he has the ability to drop back, that needs to be looked at. Last season, 1 PBU, 1 forced fumble. Back in 2021, 2 PBUs, a pick, 2 forced fumbles. There's not many defensive ends that drop back into coverage over 100 times a season, and Van Noy is going to give you that versatility, and he's going to be a player who I really think could be maybe like a Casey Hayward, maybe like a Deron Harmon, where they're up there, they're a veteran, but can teach the younger guys the way to properly run this defense. So let me know down in the comments section right now, do you want the Raiders to sign Kyle Van Noy? If you're like, yes, Mitch, this is a guy that we've been talking about for a long time on the show, give me a yes. If you're like, no, dude, I'm good. We have enough talent. I want to save the money. Then please go spam your no. To me, he's a good fit. The Raiders need a linebacker, and it's not going to cost a lot. Win, just win, baby. Go get yourself some Kyle Van Noy. Considering of how much it could potentially cost for him, his 2022 cap hit was $2.25 million. Did he play well? Yes. Does he continue to play at a high level? Sure he does. But to me, he's going to be no more than $4 million per year. And the Raiders right now are in a little bit of an interesting situation for salary cap because you still have to be able to pay your rookie, so they will have to eventually either renegotiate some contracts, restructure, or move on from some other players. But Van Noy fits. Like, the Raiders, they brought in Robert Spillane, who has 0 coverage ability, just a true middle linebacker. Divine Diablo, who's there, but then after that, your linebacker room is really bad. Like, it's probably one of the worst linebacker rooms in the NFL as it stands right now. Can you address it in the draft? Of course you can. But then you also look at defensive end. If it wasn't for Max Crosby, this might be the worst defensive end group in the NFL. Like, Chandler Jones hurt, huge question mark. Then you got Malcolm Kuntz. Then you got Willis, who the Raiders just signed. To me, he offers you a player who can do both. And if you don't want to spend that high draft pick out on an edge rusher, or you don't want to have to spend that high draft pick on a linebacker, luckily for y'all, I mean, it does. It gives you the ability to do, kind of kill 2 birds with one stone, which is what I think the Raiders are eventually going to need with this defense. He would fit in Patrick Graham's system. He would do a lot of good. According to PFF, last season, 624 snaps, a 63.4 overall grade, a 62.3 run defense grade, and a coverage grade of 60.6. Are those earth-shattering numbers? No. But I also know this. If I can get 624 snaps from Kyle Van Noy with this Las Vegas Raiders team, I'm going to be feeling pretty damn good. Also, Van Noy back in 2021, guess where he played? The New England Patriots. He led all linebackers with an 83.9 coverage grade. He's big like a defensive end. He can move like a linebacker, but then he can also cover the underneath routes. Like, one of the areas of the field that the Raiders, I feel like year in and year out, get killed with is the underneath routes, whether that's a running back, whether that's a tight end. Yeah, they get killed in a lot of defensive areas. But Van Noy gives you a lot of versatility. Now, let's just say the Raiders like, yeah, you know what? We're not going to go out and get this guy. The only two other linebackers that I would even put in the same conversation right now as Van Noy, Bobby Wagner, Anthony Barr. Could you look at Anthony Barr because you have connections there with Minnesota? Sure. Could you bring in Bobby Wagner? You'd probably have to overpay him. If you're like, no, we're not going to look at the linebacker position. We're going to look at the edge position. Besides Kyle Van Noy, here are the other top edges out there. You got Jadeveon Clowney, Leonard Floyd, Frank Clark, Yannick Ngakoue. The biggest names that I would say Raider Nation should keep an eye on are Trey Flowers, Bud Dupree, Melvin Ingram, and Justin Houston. Those would be the big names that I could see the Silver and Black having at least a little bit of interest in. So before I go today, I'm sitting up here saying that Van Noy fits this defensive scheme. He fits in with what the Raiders are trying to build for the long term, and I don't think it's going to be a lot of money. All those three reasons there is why I believe that the Las Vegas Raiders could potentially sign Kyle Van Noy. If you haven't already, hit me up on Twitter, Instagram. I'm at Mitchell Renz 365. You already know where to find me over on Locals. And if the Raiders do end up getting a deal done with Van Noy, you best believe that I'm going to be live here on the Raiders Report, so you better get those notifications turned on.